Flipped classroom, you can also call them inverted classrooms. It is a very powerful way for learning, but it also requires a lot of commitment from both sides, students and teachers. I'm teaching an inverted classroom now for the second term. It sounded perfect in the beginning. How was it in reality? There are two special features of this inverted classroom that I taught. One, I inherited the inverted classroom, meaning it was already set up, the learning materials and the online platform was already set up. I implemented a few changes, I will tell you what this is and why I did that. And second, I teach this fully remote. So a fully remote inverted classroom, my verdict after 2 runs through it. What is an inverted classroom? So simply spoken, this is a variation of blended learning. Blended learning means that the teaching, so where the teacher is explaining something, is put to the asynchronous self-paced online learning phase. So people are on their own with the computer and there is the input in form of videos, materials to read and quizzes or writing tasks that you have to fulfill. And when you have achieved those learning goals basically, then there are synchronous learning phases that are time limited, so you have to be in class for, let's say, 90 minutes, and there is now the time for thinking together, asking questions, working in groups and brainstorming, and the educator is present, but he's more a guide to help through the learned materials. Now the flipped classroom is a way of blended learning because it's exactly like that. You have out-of-class activities, meaning the lecture is given at home alone, and then the learning materials with tasks and everything is outsourced to this asynchronous self-paced phase. This is typically computer aided with learning management systems. Nowadays there are also AI tutors that can help with this asynchronous learning. And then when you are in class, there are interactive activities, meaning group work or any type of quizzes or scenarios that you work through. And this is clearly student-centered. So the students have to come prepared and the educator has to come prepared. He's the expert and we can now guide the students through the material without repeating all of the materials. And with that, the learning goals will be solidified. I was excited when I took over this inverted classroom because it was already set up. Now what's special here is that not only did I teach this completely remote, so online, it was already set up, and it's very exciting because it was not the central core expertise that I have as a biochemist, cell biologist, geneticist. And now there comes the very, very interesting part why I took this over. Because I had the opportunity to work through the learning materials and through this inverted classroom myself before teaching it, because I needed to familiarize myself with the materials. So in a nutshell, I approached this inverted classroom at first as a student. And I noticed immediately that it took me a lot of time to work through the learning materials, and I noticed also immediately that I felt a little lost at some point. And that's where it comes in what I changed before the first term when I taught this. So what I, as the student, when I worked through all of the materials, was missing was specific tasks that would help me work through the materials that were a little bit more than just bullet point learning goals. I felt I would benefit myself from like a small list of maybe 5 to 10 questions, what I call guiding questions that would guide me through such a massive amount of material. So if I can answer these questions, then I have understood what the session was all about. What I also noticed, what I would like to have if I were to go through these materials and wanted to learn it, I would want to have a kind of script, because I felt that the maximum time that students have for this course and should spend on the learning materials was already reached. Now you can say, okay, isn't that the task of the student to, well, extract all of this information and do this themselves? Students make notes when they learn, and also when you address those guiding questions, you automatically make notes. And we do have a lot of group activities and tasks where you actually are writing. So I felt that considering the load of the material, so the workload and the amount of the materials, this would be an additional pillar of support. So I had to wait for the first run through to wait for the students' feedback if my impression was true. And yes, the students appreciated a lot that there was a script, and they appreciated also that there were these guiding questions that they knew, okay, this is what to look at. What are the chances and benefits for such an inverted classroom? I do agree there is a clear learning benefit because you have so many aspects of active learning implemented. When you are alone at home, you have to actively work through materials. And then when you are in class with the colleagues and the educator, you also have active learning, because what we do there is we have a specific group work task which is connected to the topic but new, and then compiling everything in a written form in an online co-writing pad. After the session, we don't read out what's in these notes from the group work, but I ask questions and I moderate a kind of mini discussion. This is also where active learning happens, because you then have to reflect again on what you just have worked through in the group with the group members. The advantage for the asynchronous phase at home is that students learn at their own pace and they're not distracted by a class that just continues and you just had your thought and you wanted to spend 5 more minutes on this aspect. So that's a clear advantage. A chance that is often mentioned is that the synchronous time with the educator and the students in one room, for us online in the online meeting room, could be used more efficiently for solving problems and discussion. Clearly, everyone who has ever taught an inverted classroom will probably agree with me that this is a benefit on paper. Yes, it's a benefit, but it needs a lot of moderation and active work from us educators. Activation, student activation, and having a classroom that is based on trust will help so that people speak to each other and speak up, but that takes a lot of energy and effort and time, and also a little bit of feel for the situation. Clearly, this is where, for me, it's much more difficult, because when you are in a room physically with people in person around you, you can see the reactions, the faces. There was a reaction, maybe I ask directly, do you have a thought about that? Let's share, or you don't look convinced, what's on your mind? Things like that can be very activating. When I'm teaching this online, the cameras are switched off, so I don't see the students. But I have my ways now to ask questions and to get them speaking, because they are also interested in the exchange. One time where I saw that this was working really well was when we had a efficient group work and then we had a brilliant discussion. It was brilliant because not only did I hear the voices of almost everyone that was participating, more than 20 people, and everyone spoke up at some point. Without me picking them, they raised their hands and they contributed. This was such a great moment. I can't express how awesome this felt, because it was a true moment of exchange and active learning together. I analyzed then after this amazing session what was different, and clearly there was a factor in this discussion which was beyond the science, beyond the technical and the facts part. I raised an ethical aspect and I specifically asked them to share opinions and thoughts around this connected to what they have just worked on, and it had this sweet spot where it was not something that you would not want to share because people would put you in a box, but it was emotional and strong enough so that they shared what they thought. So this was perfect, and you cannot artificially rebuild this in every session. It depends a little bit on the topic, but I keep all of those moments of success in my mind, and I also make notes and I try to reproduce those for the students by asking better questions, being a better moderator for the discussions, and so by preparing the sessions even better. There are a few challenges that are common when you talk to educators or when you exchange experiences with inverted classrooms. One challenge that you hear often is that the students are not prepared. I am aware that in the beginning of the term, the preparation degree is higher, so every piece of learning material was worked through and everything was prepared. And the longer the term runs with the workload that the students have, they work strategically, and I understand that. At this point, I just need to know as the educator what they have prepared and what not, instead of blaming them for not being prepared. So I asked them, so who has prepared the guiding questions and the PowerPoint materials? And then all hands go up. They never appear not prepared, I must say. I'm super happy about that. And that's also the attitude that you have to have for such an inverted classroom in a university setting. You have to want to study this topic and get through the term, you have to want to succeed in the exam, otherwise the inverted classroom will not work. So I asked them, did you prepare the basics? Okay. Did you watch the video material? Not so many hands go up. Who read the peer-reviewed paper that was associated to the topic? And then usually no hands go up at the mid and close to the end of the term. This doesn't matter at this point. What matters is that you catch the students where they are, and that what they have already prepared is solidified and sinks in. We will reach the learning goals and they will be prepared for the exam. Of course, in an ideal world, you work through everything, but come on, let's be real, right? And the worst thing at this point is to give a speech and to say, you have to come prepared, otherwise it doesn't work. No, that speech is in the beginning when we introduce the inverted classroom principle and when we show how it's working. The trust is an important aspect because they will tell me when they are not prepared. And then I have the task to make it work. This was in the first semester once the case. From those people that appeared in the one unit, there were many really not prepared. That was a single time. What I did then, I said, let's work through this together. And I switched the plan and we developed together a whiteboard where by their input and my guidance and their research with the materials, we could really put down all of the learning goals and all of the keywords that are important so that anybody and everybody could look at that and say, this is what I need to learn for this unit to be on top and not to lose track for being able to work through the next units. What the result of this situation is they trusted me that this is not about me punishing them if they come unprepared. The contrary, the next week more people came because they said, let's try to be prepared and we will learn something. So that's also something that people say, the challenge is to make them attend the synchronous session. And I must say, yes, the numbers drop also towards the end of the term, that's clear, priorities. Some people also decide that they don't want to attend the exam and then they would focus on other things. But it is my true belief that if people do not appear in class right in the first 3 or 4 sessions, 3 or 4 weeks, the educator does something severely wrong. Because of course, it has to be efficient and it has to be worth it, because these 2 hours that you sit there together with your peers, but it must be worth your while. Although they are having group works, I try my best. I'm not delivering every time, I'm far from perfect, but this strategy landed. It's not perfect every time, but they notice that they will learn and benefit when they're in class together. Let's go to the caveats and what people don't tell you about inverted classrooms. Maybe they tell you, but who knows? It's definitely not a magic fix. And yes, it depends heavily on student discipline. I will add here, it also depends heavily on educator discipline, because you have to want to become a better educator and moderator from week to week to week, no matter what happens. An inverted classroom requires a very clear set of expectations and a very clear roadmap for the term. So planning is key here. Also, an inverted class does not work for all topics and for all groups of people. The honest reflection at the end, what worked and what didn't, and what if I did this or that differently, that's key to improve this type of learning format over time. So my practical tips, what helped me for this inverted classroom: keep the materials short and focused. That's something I would work on. If I would continue teaching this inverted classroom, I would probably cut down on the materials. What really helped was implementing clear guiding questions. So phrasing the learning goals in questions, put them in the learning management system as a text so that it's immediately in the student's view when you enter this section. This is the topic, this is what the learning goals are. These questions you have to be able to answer for reaching the learning goals. And then there are the materials. What also actually helped is my script. So putting everything that is in the PowerPoint slides and the learning materials into a concise script. It's not a textbook, it has no pictures. The pictures are in the PowerPoint presentations that are provided. Adding small accountability checks, so asking what was prepared, but then also quizzes where you see what was prepared and what was learned, and reflection phases, and a lot of moderation for active learning. That is critical and absolutely required. What also helps a lot is to have the whiteboard open, or in the classroom the blackboard or the whiteboard, and to put keywords on the whiteboard so that you have a little snapshot of the aspects that we talked about, and when they look back at that when they prepare for the exam, they would notice, oh, this is something I have to look into because I didn't fully understand. My final verdict is I would suggest to do this only for more advanced students, so at the end of their bachelor studies, so at the end of the undergraduate qualification, because then they have learned already a little bit how they learn, and then they can handle the workload. In the end of second year and then third year of the undergraduate studies, that's the ideal time point to do such a flipped inverted classroom. In other topics it might be different, so for mathematicians it might be already helpful for first semesters. The people that are experts in that field must judge that, and in case of doubt, try it with one cohort and you will see the outcome. I encourage everyone to experiment also with learning formats. Always think about that the students are the experiment at this point. And that's why it is absolutely crucial, if we set up something like that we tell the students exactly why this makes sense for their learning and education and benefit, what they have to do, what I have to do to make it work, and then ask for feedback. Student feedback is gold. I ask for feedback midterm and I ask for feedback obviously at the end, but ask for feedback regularly and at least once midterm so you can adjust if some things are not working for the students. The level of difficulty is too difficult, not difficult enough, exactly right. The preparation time, I don't have enough time, it's okay, I'm overwhelmed, I don't feel prepared. I feel that the sessions help me to learn the material and the topics. I dislike the group work because, and then let them add something to the free text form. Getting feedback is absolutely crucial, and then also implementing this feedback. Did you try to teach an inverted classroom? Did you set it up yourself? How do you think it would feel if you were the student? Let me know your experiences and challenges with flipped classrooms. Also students, please let me know where the struggles were. Have a nice day. If you like this content, subscribe, and happy teaching.